welcome to this week's Monday Minutes. My name is Kelly.
And my name is Jessie, and this week we are going to talk to you about patron restrictions. There are a lot of ways in Koha that you can either manually restrict a patron or automatically restrict a patron, and we're going to talk to you about those today.
This is great, Jessie. This is something that we all could use and maybe don't use it as much as we should.
Yeah, exactly. And, there's so many different scenarios that can come into play when restricting a patron, whether it's, trespassing or they've done something to violate a policy in the library. We'll talk about ways that you can do that. So first, we'll talk about manual restrictions. Manual restrictions are a way that you can go into the patron's account and essentially add information in there. So if we pull up an individual's account, you'll notice right on the checkout table where you see your holds and claims, right at the end, you'll see restrictions. And this is where you can come in and manually restrict a patron in the system. If we click that add manual restriction, this allows us to optionally add in a comment. So, did they violate a policy? Did they trespass? Whatever the circumstance is. And then also setting an expiration. So if they have a 90-day restriction, or maybe it's indefinite, you can leave it blank. Once you add that restriction in the system, it will update the patron's account and show that the patron's account is restricted. You'll notice right next to it, you can view that restriction, and that will take you down and show you any of the information. You'll also be able to see the date and the notes up there if you added a expiration in there. And if you have the permission, you can override this restriction temporarily, which would allow them to do things like an on-site checkout, which is a system preference that ties into this.
It's good to note like that once that restriction happened, we're still in that checkout tab, but the complete option to check things out to this patron is gone. That box is completely gone.
And once you go down there, if it is set and you want to remove it, you can simply come in, you'll get the modal window that asks you if you want to remove the restriction, and then that takes us back out to their account where then they can, of course, begin the checkout process again.
So Jessie, once a patron is restricted on the staff interface, is that visible on the Koha OPAC as well?
Yeah, that's a great question. We have an example pulled up so we can look at it. So this is Missy's account, and you can see right up top, once she is logged in, she'll get a message that says that her account has been frozen, and it will tell them either why with that message, or in this case, it was just left blank. They can see that it's either old overdues or damage fees, and they can visit their account page for more information.
Okay, perfect.
All right, Kelly, let's talk about the second way that you can automatically restrict patrons, and that's through the tools module. And under our patrons in circulation, we have our overdue notice and status triggers. Now, Kelly, talk to us a little bit about this.
So this is where you're going to set up your overdue notices. These are the the emails that you send out or the mail that you send out to tell patrons that they are in fact overdue. It tells you how many days after overdue, what letter they'll send. And then in those columns, one of the columns is called restrict. So if we mark it restrict, when that notice gets sent to the patron, it will also restrict them automatically.
And Kelly, what is one system preference that ties into this that would automatically lift that restriction if all items are returned that were overdue?
Well, Jessie, that's a great question. I think it's called auto remove overdue restrictions. So once the patron has returned all their overdues, that restriction can automatically come off. So your staff don't have to manually remove those restrictions. And that is a system preference you need to turn on for Koha to automatically remove the restriction.
Perfect. Now, there's a few other restriction system preferences that tie in here besides the ones that Kelly and I mentioned. And one that ties into restriction periods is the options to cumulative restriction periods. And what that allows you to decide is if It's set to don't cumulate. The patron will be restricted only for the longest period. So if they do have multiple restrictions on there, and then your other option is to cumulate, and then that would restrict the sum of the restriction periods. So that is one of the system preferences that you'll see here, and that gives you the option.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you have one for restrictions that block renewing. And what that would allow you to do is decide if a patron is restricted to allow them to renew items in the system.
So there's two ways staff can automatically restrict somebody, set a date, and that would be removed automatically with that date, and then overdues as well. So it's a great way to kind of monitor what's going on in your patron world.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, just another quick Monday Minute on patron restrictions. Have a great week.
Have a great week. Bye.
Bye.